The moon is awash with mystique, myth, superstition, and esoterica. The new moon is like a start of a wave, the start of new intentions. The full moon is like the crashing of the wave, and the waning moon is like the decay of a wave retreating. A healthy woman in her power has her menstrual cycle during or near full moon or new moon. It is more beneficial esoterically to fast or cleanse the days before a new moon. At full moon, the pineal gland opens more and the spiritual veil is thinner, so to speak. Most humans have dense energy and live in the five senses and personality matrix and are disconnected from the moon's energetic cycles. The moon phases also affect the planting of crops and plants, and many other things. In astrological terms, the moon is one's soul, emotions, moods, and subconscious, and is home in the sign of Cancer, which links to feelings, trust, intuition, nurture, and mothering. The moon has over 100 deities from all around the world, dating back millennia. These cover moon worship, adoration or veneration of the moon, a deity in the moon, fertility, or a personification or symbol of the moon. Most notably Diana with the Romans, and the earlier Greek Selene, Artemis, Hecate triad. Some even say Islam and Allah came from a lunar cult, from pre-Islamic Arabic myth. In Hermetic alchemy, the sun and moon need to be reconciled within the self. The inner male and female, logic and emotion, communication and feeling, all united in perfect balance before the elixir can be achieved. The moon is the violet ninth Sephiroth in Kabbalah, and is linked to initiation and many other things. In ancient Arabia, the moon's path through the 12 zodiac signs over a lunar year was split into 28 lunar mansions, with each one ruled by a spirit that could be invoked. Talismans and amulets were used within this system too. No matter which mansion, benevolent magic was done on waxing moon and malevolent during waning. This system was popular in the Renaissance period in Europe, and one can still find it in use to this very day. Her charms are for sure a mystery unto herself. The word planet comes from the Greek word planetos, meaning wandering star. The wandering stars are 8 specific luminaries in the sky. From the left in the image, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and the dimmer and slower Uranus, Neptune and Pluto. The wandering stars are rays of energy, and they represent certain ideas and archetypes that all ideas and archetypes root back to. A conception of the universe, inside you too. The macrocosm in the microcosm in the macrocosm, as above so below. Each of the wandering stars are linked to certain symbols, myth and deity, as we will soon see. This ancient geocentric model was actually pretty close to the truth, and lasted for over 1,000 years before the elite smashed it up. The error here is that each of the wandering stars are actually all quite close to the ecliptic. Each are probable to be a similar distance from the Earth, but correctly here, some are faster than others. Note too that each wandering star has a unique brightness and colour. Another crude way to aesthetically show the wandering stars is here, all close to the ecliptic. Note though that the speeds here are not correct. Each of the wandering stars has its own retrograde motion. Retrograde is a term used to describe the phenomenon of each wandering star stopping and then reversing direction in the flat Earth sky, before continuing forwards again. A famous aesthetic depiction of the wandering stars was from the model from Ptolemy, who died in 160 AD. His model, mocked today by the masses, was actually quite close to what is. This model is close, but each wandering star is actually close to the ecliptic, less of a distance between them. Therefore these bigger circles and orbits and gaps are not correct. Also, it is not certain if the retrograde motions are doing a loop in altitude, or simply going into retrograde at the same altitude. I cannot repeat enough that each wandering star has a unique motion stroke cycle that is independent from all other sky luminaries. These motions, no matter how they are depicted, always present harmonic geometry. We will go into this a little more later. One could do hours on each of the wandering stars. I aim to share a few minutes regarding each of their motions, characteristics, and archetypal energy, the core force of prana from each. Mercury comes from the Latin of miércoles. It has an English translation meaning Wednesday. Mercury rules Wednesdays. Mercury is not what the elite want you to think it is. A rotating spherical rock 50 million miles away has mind-controlled the masses. The adjectives that come to my mind are divine, geometric, fractal, interdimensional, and conscious. Mercury always travels close to the Sun, and due to this, it is the most difficult to see with the naked eye. Here I've turned off sunlight, stroke daylight, so we can move forward 24 hours a click and see its motion forwards, retrograde, then back to the same point again. Its repeating cycle taking 88 days to complete. If we look at any astrological chart depiction, all luminaries revolve around the flat Earth in the middle, all close together at the ecliptic. The Moon may be appearing to move quickly here, but it's actually going slower than the Sun, so it falls behind every 24 hours. Mercury stays close to the Sun, passing it, then retrograding behind it. Does Mercury orbit the Sun? Is this a loop, like Ptolemy thought? We don't really know for sure, but it is probable at least sometimes, due to Mercury sometimes not passing behind the Sun, but passing in front of the Sun, 13 or 14 times 3, known as the Mercury transit. Now one needs special filters to witness this, and it helps prove just how small the wandering stars are. The next Mercury transit is in November 2019, then in 2032. This event lasts about 6 hours or so. So usually Mercury passes behind the Sun, or does it do something similar to the Moon, and disappear when close to the Sun? Who's to say it hasn't disappeared when in front, and the black circle is due to some magnetic electro or pranic handshake, akin to a solar eclipse? It is said that Mercury has phases, just like the Moon, a long 88-day cycle to complete the phases. This graphic is crude. I'm again not saying it loops, and this could be drawn as a straight line, or an ellipse, or a circle, but it shows, like the Moon, the side closest to the Sun is self-luminated. That the 26% phase on the left is bigger than the 51% phase next to it. If these images are trustworthy, this would suggest a looping higher in altitude during retrograde. Mercury astrologically signifies mind, learning, communication, thoughts, logic, reason and knowledge. It rules the constellation of Virgo, Earth, the energy of intellectualism, rationale and practicality, the orderly and helpful ray of service that overconforms. It also rules the constellation of Gemini, Air, the energy of information, intelligence, change, talking, being social, spontaneous, fickleness and indecision. Mercury retrograde is feared more than other retrogrades of other wandering stars. In retrograde, the power and force of the ray of energy is weakened. It's gone back on itself. In Mercury retrograde, electrics can play up, communication and contracts can be delayed or have misunderstandings. It's a time to back up, re-look at things, and not to start big new projects, sign new contracts, or to buy new electrical goods, properties or vehicles. The most notable deities and archetypes linked to Mercury were the Roman god of wealth, word and commerce. Also Hermes, the Greek god of alchemy, born from Thoth, the Egyptian god of writing, knowledge and the emerald tablet. In Kabbalah it is the 8th Sephiroth, and linked to many other things. Venus is from the Latin word viernes, meaning Friday. Venus is far from what your local gatekeeper school science teacher thinks. Here we can see the Sun and Moon, Mercury in orange, and Venus in small white. Like Mercury, Venus always travels close to the Sun, but is slower, and travels further away from the Sun than Mercury, in a slower cycle, ensuring Venus to be the morning star before the Sun, or the evening star after the Sun. This Venus cycle takes 225 days. To the naked eye, Venus doesn't appear to twinkle, but instead glows with a bright and steady silvery light, making her the second brightest light in the night sky, after the Moon. Out of the wandering stars, it is only Venus and Mercury that have phases. So Venus also appears to get smaller and bigger. So again, it either has an apogee and perigee, or it simply gets smaller and bigger where it is, at the same altitude. Here we can see some esoteric labels for Venus' different phases, known as its underworld cycle. Its descent from the evening star to its birth as the morning star. Again, this doesn't have to be drawn as a loop or orbit of the Sun. It could be a straight line. Her full synodic cycle, from inferior conjunction to inferior conjunction, takes near 584 days, or about 1.6 years. This is due to the interaction of Venus's 225-day cycle with the 365-day solar cycle. Now Venus, whether it loops around the Sun or not, when it conjuncts with the Sun, it creates these 5 points. And these 5 points are in perfect geometry above us. This is known as the dance of Venus. And these 5 points make the perfect pentagram, fractals in the sky. This was all known to the mystics of the Renaissance period. This is the current Venus cycle within its current dance. Venus also creates geometric patterns with Mercury, all from a random Big Bang, they tell your children, via their worldwide mind control program. Venus is the only other wandering star, as well as Mercury, that sometimes appears to pass in front of the Sun. Like Mercury, we don't really know if it is in front of the Sun, or in the Sun, or if it disappears like the Moon due to some pranic handshake. A Venus transit is more rare though. This reoccurrence pattern of 8 plus 105.5 plus 8 plus 121.5 years repeats itself in the catalogue of Venus transits. An example of this pattern is in the transits of 1874, 1882, then 2004 and 2012. Note that Venus appears larger than Mercury when transiting the Sun.